Hello and welcome everyone to the Three Principles Global Community webinar. The Three Principles Global Community, or 3PGC, is a nonprofit organization that's committed to bringing an understanding of the three principles to people throughout the world. Today we have Dr. Amy Johnson with us, and Dr. Amy Johnson is a three principles practitioner who helps people find lasting freedom from unwanted habits and anxiety. She's the author of Being Human and the Little Book of Big Change, the No-Willpower Approach to Breaking Any Habit. In 2017, Amy co-created the Little School of Big Change, an online school designed to share the principles and help people experience lasting change from the inside out. She has been a regularly featured expert on the Steve Harvey Show and Oprah.com, as well as in the Wall Street Journal and Self Magazine. You can learn more about Amy at dramyjohnson.com or at thelittleschoolofbigchange.com. And I will post that for anybody watching the recording. I'll post that information underneath the video so you can find her. So Amy, thank you so much for joining us. I'm excited to hear what you have to share, and I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you.
All right. Thank you, Bonnie. And thanks everyone for being here. It's always really an honor, because I first started to learn about the principles in this way. I had a new baby and I was up all night feeding him and doing various things with him. And I stumbled across these webinars. I stumbled across Three Principles Movies site. And I basically spent the next year, mostly at 4 o'clock in the morning with a baby attached to me with my little earbuds in, kind of taking all this in. And before I ever did anything more official, before I ever went to a conference, talked face to face with a person. So it's amazing. My book, Being Human, I wrote mostly just being influenced by those videos. And I think that's so awesome. And it's a little bit kind of what I wanted to talk about today, like how we really can come to see this, and letting our mind be really open to how that looks and what's possible when we start to just look in a direction, how much that direction of truth kind of has a momentum behind it that does all the work, and so it's still just incredible to me, and sometimes to others when I share that wow, I really saw a whole different side of life just in my own little nursery with my kid at 4 a.m. watching complete strangers videos, and since then I've done more things, but it's not necessary. I don't know what is necessary, to be honest. Maybe nothing's necessary. I know people just go out in nature and they see things. Other people spend years with mentors and in programs and classrooms and they see things. And it's all good. It's all kind of cool. So yeah, I would love to have kind of a conversation with you guys rather than just me talking a lot. And Bonnie knows I've changed my mind, or my mind has changed several times about what I'm even going to talk about. So I'm curious to see what happens here too. But one of the things that's really been kind of coming up for me, especially in the last few days, really over the last few months, but over the last few days in particular, is seeing how people see this, and how we, like, some of the things that seem really common when we're looking to see more. So there's no how to, there's no like, do this and you'll have insights. We're always having insights. There's no do this and you'll see more about the principles. Don't do this because that'll get in your way. It's not hard and fast like that. But at the same time, there are things that seem to coincide with kind of getting through a feeling of stuckness, or maybe just having one of those moments where you're like, oh, I see that in a whole new way. Or maybe even the moment is like, oh, I thought I knew something, and now I'm completely in a different place, which is another kind of awesome insight to have, where you realize you know absolutely nothing. So there's no formula, and I know you guys all know that. But there are some things I've picked up in my own experience, and especially in my online school, and just in the last year that I've gotten to so fortunate to get to talk with so many people about this understanding and be in this conversation. Just kind of those things that tend to show up, that that you can tell sort of coincide with maybe a little deeper grounding or just another big sort of breakthrough in this. So I thought maybe I'd share a few of those. And then again, I'd love to hear from you guys and what you're seeing and what you see about that. So one of them is a shift in making it not about us, like seeing that what we're seeing here, what we're looking toward, has nothing to do with you. It has nothing to do with your problem. It's not personal. And really, like when people get to a place, I think, of taking themselves out of the equation, that opens us up to see so much more. Now, this is one of the biggest ironies of my life, because I try to help people end habits, and like, people that come to me in particular, a lot of people just share this understanding and they want, people have whatever they have, whatever they're grappling with, but they're kind of more of a mentor in a mentor role, or they're, just sharing the understanding a little more generally. A lot of the people that come to me are either frozen in anxiety and their life is really kind of at a standstill, or they feel completely gripped and taken over by some kind of habit, most often an eating disorder, but not always, some kind of habit, right? So it's the biggest irony in the world to say, okay, yes, I want to see you get through this too. Of course you want to get through this, right? There's a thing and it's happening within you, and we want that to change. And oh, by the way, let's not talk about you or your problem. Let's look at this thing over here. Let's look at what's deeper and what's bigger, and let's not make this personal. And that seems at first for people, that's such a like, what do you mean? Like, I need to tell you how my anxiety, like, do you want me to tell you on the scale? Did I have a 1 day or a 10 day? And I have no interest in that. And reactions to that can vary. It can be everything from relief. Sometimes it is like, oh, I don't have to rehash my day. I don't have to tell you what I ate yesterday or what my mom said to me about my weight when I was 10 or any of that, that can be gigantic relief. And, or it can be like, this isn't for me because you don't care about me. Like, I need my experience validated, and that's okay too. I've been there. Like, that's how it looks sometimes. Like you need to kind of get into your story. And sometimes people do need to tell their story, and that's fine. So it's not like I'm not saying, that you don't ever tell your story and you don't ever look at your experience and it doesn't feel personal, because of course it does. It's just that when we're kind of feeling a little stuck, like, I know there's more in this, but why am I not seeing it? Very often, what's going on is we are in our minds innocently, and usually not even consciously, trying to like making it personal, thinking about, how is this helping me? How am I doing? Has my habit stopped since I've been learning the principles? Has it gotten better? Like, we're checking in, we're keeping tabs, we're trying to apply it. Something that I'm sure you guys have all heard a lot, like, oh, I'm going to apply the principles to my anxiety. And that's just some thinking that, again, totally normal in the learning curve of things, but it's really helpful to be able to see that that's maybe going on sometimes, and set that aside and see, the power in this, part of the power in this is that it's completely impersonal. It's not about you. It doesn't, there's nothing in it about how you feel right now, or what you ate yesterday, or how many drinks you had last weekend. It's looking so much deeper than that. And if you can feel it, when people can feel the relief in that, say, okay, like, that's awesome. There's really something in that, when they can say, I don't have to rehash all these things and all of that. Yes, it's there. It's not about denying it, or even not talking about it if it feels good to talk about. But it's not the important part. What's important is the fact that we have, like, what we all have in common, that we have this resilience, that we all feel our thinking, that there is that place within every single person, not far away at all, just right there, right beneath what you ate yesterday, is peace and clarity and freedom. And so that's like an awesome place to kind of start pointing people. And something that, again, if you're listening to this and you're thinking like, oh, I thought I was seeing a lot, but now I don't know. And it feels like I'm not seeing so much. That's something to just kind of get curious about and check in with. How personal does it look? How much are we trying to apply it to ourselves in our lives? Kind of related to that, really related to that, is another one that's really kind of about like looking beyond the appearance of things. So a lot of times the appearance of things that we focus on is the part of it that looks like it's about me, 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 me. So how's my life going? How am I doing? And that's where it all looks very personal. But even beyond that, sometimes it's not that it is about me, me, me. Sometimes it's just like, I see people, and me too at times, like arguing for our experience. But I wrote an article a few weeks ago called "Your Butt is Too Big." If you're not seeing something in this, or if you're feeling a little, you've been looking and you're saying, no, I've been looking at the principles and they're just not doing it for me. Like they're not it, I don't know what those people are talking about because I'm not seeing anything in that. There's a good chance your butt is too big. and that has such a double meaning, again, given that I work with people with eating issues. But the butt is, but my thinking, it feels so real. Yeah, that's not personal either. Mine too, and everyone here, it does feel real. Yes, exactly. You found a fact. That is a fact. It feels real. It looks real. It's completely all encompassing. Consciousness does an awesome job, amazing job. So, but it just seems so real. But these thoughts are just always around, but everyone in my life is oriented here, and it's really hard for me to see around that. Whatever the but is, it's us in our innocence and, being raised in an outside in kind of pointed society. It's us just kind of looking in that direction, and sometimes not even knowing that we're looking in that direction. We're innocently still caught up in how things look. And again, it's never to like deny or negate or say that's not important. I mean, there are definitely times when you really do need to sit down with your girlfriend or your partner or even your coach or your therapist and say, here's what happened to me, or here's my thoughts and feelings. Like there's a time and place for that. But that's not the end all be all. Like that's not where it's at. That it reminds me sometimes when people want to, when we want to feel better about how we're thinking and feeling, it's kind of like we are arguing to kind of rearrange the furniture on our house. Like, no, but wouldn't this look better over here? Like, I'm going to stay in my house. This is still my living room. But don't you think the chair should go in that corner and the table should go here? And there's so much like in that little arrangement in that room. And it's like, okay, but what if you step out of the house? Like open the front door and see everything else that isn't this little room. And that's kind of how it is when we're caught up in like the appearance of things. So our thoughts, our feelings, our behaviors, like our experience even. It's a temporary fleeting thing, and it's kind of just what we see at one level, but it's just really amazing to start to see that there's a whole nother level there that is kind of truth, I guess, that is that stuff that doesn't change, that isn't thoughts, feelings, behaviors. It's what's there all the time beneath, bigger than thoughts, feelings, behaviors. Like what's the backdrop? What's the ground for thoughts, feelings, behaviors? You can get a new chair if you want. You can put it anywhere in the room you want, but what's beneath that always, that never, ever, ever changes? Like that's kind of where we want to keep looking. I just learned from my mentor, Dick and Benninger, this weekend that, all those Hindu and Buddhist kind of images where they have like the person that has like the elephant trunk, they're half man, half animal. And a lot of times that person, creature, whatever, will be holding a knife or a sword. I didn't know what that meant. I mean, I don't know. I'm not into those things, but I just assumed like it looked kind of violent to me. I'm like, I don't know what that is. It looks kind of violent. But he was telling me, no, that sword or knife is actually symbolic of cutting through, like cutting between truth and ego. Truth, sorry, my dog's thumping in the couch. Truth what's real, stable, doesn't change, never ever moves, and everything else, every thought we ever have, every feeling, every behavior, every opinion, everything else that's in flux, our bodies, which are constantly changing, the world around us, which is constantly changing. There's what's stable and there's everything else. And I loved hearing that they weren't just violent, they're actually extremely wise, tapping into real, wisdom, that there's a separation there. And that's where so much freedom has been for me. And I see, and for a lot of people, is starting to orient toward that stable part and acknowledge that there's stuff that's grabbing your attention, that's dramatic, that's always changing. Fine. That's human life. But you don't want to stare there, because that's where you just kind of sit there and get caught up in your butt. And then you wonder why you're not seeing that much. You're staring at your own butt too much. He also said that a lot of times they'll have, in the image that we were looking at, like a necklace or something that has skulls on it. And again, I just thought this is kind of morbid and violent. I don't know what that's about. But that supposedly, and I'm not going to get this exactly right, but that kind of symbolizes a cutting off of the head, cutting off of all this thinking. And again, looking toward what's true. Like if they have a wreath of skulls on them, and I'm adding my own interpretation here, but it's like they're not interested in all the little ego thoughts and concerns and all this kind of mental stuff so much. They've cut it off. They're wearing it as a badge. Like that's not what's real and important. There's something much bigger we can point to. So I just I just really, really love that. So those two things together, kind of looking at how maybe we're caught up in kind of the personal side of things, or we're trying to make this understanding personal. Sometimes, again, there's no rules, but sometimes that can kind of hold you back if you feel like there's more to see. And also, along the same lines, our own experience, thoughts, feelings, stuff like, no, but you don't know how my life is. Yeah, we all have that. And one of the things, again, in being in a community, like this is something that as a coach, getting to talk with tons and tons of people over the years, it's really a luxury of the work that those of us who teach, not just teach this, but just work with people, anybody that talks with people that kind of sees something in this. It's such a luxury of that, because you talk with people all day, every day. And really quickly, for me, way before I even knew about the principles, just as a life coach, 10, 12 years ago, I started seeing really quickly, everybody kind of has the same problem. Like if you don't get too caught up in the specifics and the details, there are only so many thoughts people have. And they're all really, there's a handful of them, and people add their own details in and get caught up to differing degrees. But there's not really a lot of variety going on here. We're all just humans swirling around in our own stories, and every single one of them, once those stories settle down, they start to feel better and see things more clearly. And that's an amazing thing to see as a person that shares or works with people, because it's like you just really start to have so much faith in the resilience of the people you're working with. Their story is no different than anyone else's. And when that story quiets down, they're like 99% of the way there. Maybe you can share a few things on top of that are helpful, but they're kind of there on their own. And then personally, it's like that one took a little longer, because you always see it quicker in other people. But then I started to see, after a few years of this, like, oh, wait a minute. If every one of my clients has the same recycled worry, maybe my worries are, maybe I'm like them too. That one literally did take a few more years, but it's like you get to see that. And I love that about any kind of community. Like in our little School of Big Change, we have a community where people are sharing, and they really get to see that. They're like, wow, there's 100 people in here sharing what's going on for them. And everyone's like, me too, you too? I thought that was just me, So I always encourage people to be in some kind of community that feels good to you. And it does, it could just be a free Facebook group. It could be anything, even just friends that get together, and have an eye toward that, kind of look toward, how are we all the same? Not how am I special and how am I different, but really having that slant toward how are we all the same? Because that there's so much in being the same as everyone else that's extremely helpful. Just being ordinary, just being plain old you, no different. It's really awesome. So there's a third one that I think I won't say but like it coincides with maybe seeing a little bit more. For me, that was kind of having a new respect for principles. What are principles? Like we talk about principles and I've heard about them from the beginning, but I think somewhere still my mind was like, yeah, but principle, I don't know. I'm not so sure about that, but we'll just keep exploring. And that's okay. It's okay to be there, and I don't know, to be unsure until you feel sure. I mean, it's okay to be anywhere that we are with this, but really seeing like, what if this absolutely just is true? Like, what if these really are principles that are never, ever, ever not true? And again, these are all tied in together, because when you see that, naturally, your butt becomes less important, but it's like, oh, this is always here. It's always true. And I had an experience with a woman who said she had read something that I'd written a long time ago, and she said it was really helpful. And I wasn't really talking about principles at that time. A lot of times I'm still not. I'm just kind of sharing the implications of the principles or what's been helpful kind of in it, for people. But not necessarily going to, by the way, there are these three things that kind of, describe human life, and we should look there. Like, that's not always there. And I don't think it always has a place in everything. So a lot of times when I'm writing or whatever, or sharing, it's just about like things I've seen that have been helpful, that are kind of implications of the principles. So she read this article about, that she's always well, and, about our innate health and how that works. And it was really helpful for her. Like she said, it really, like she kind of snapped out of some stuff and was just feeling great for a while. But then, what happens inevitably for everyone is we have a different mood. We have a different thought. You can read or hear anything and be on that little high from that thing, but that's not going to last. It's never going to last. You're always going to go back to something else. Some other thinking comes in. So she was like, yeah, I know that this woman is speaking some kind of truth, and that was helpful, but then her moods came back and whatever. And then she said that later, months later, she came across some other stuff about the three principles, and through a lot of like, dot connecting, I guess, realized, oh, wait a minute, this article that just coincidentally helped me 6 months ago, she's talking about the same thing. Like there's a thing to this, is kind of how she put it. There's a structure behind there's principles behind this, and that was so, that was a huge thing for me to hear her say that, because it makes a lot of sense. It makes so much sense that we are so bombarded, especially if you're on any kind of social media, with nice quotes, cute pictures, nice ideas, a shit ton of advice that you probably shouldn't be taking. But happy, smiley face, flowers, happy quotes. Great. And that stuff really does help people. And it helps people for good reason, because it is usually pointing to some truth. If it resonates at all, it probably is pointing to some truth. And so we see that, and some part of us that already knows all of these truths perks up a little bit, and we feel better. But it's a whole different level, takes it to a whole different level to see that there's actually something behind these good ideas. There are principles. Like there's a reason that that happy quote is true. There's a reason that this like nice, cute picture makes you feel good. There's a whole structure and a whole set of principles behind that make it all make sense in a much deeper way. So, when I wrote Little Book of Big Change, I had some people read it, and one person told me, well, it's not really about the principles. It's about, it's full of like the implications of the principles. Like, hey, willpower is not going to work. insight's going to work, and those kinds of ideas. And that person was totally right. It wasn't a 3 principles book because it didn't point to that bigger foundation. Now, has it been super helpful for a lot of people? Yeah, it's great. It's full of great truths. But I'm starting to just see myself and in my work with other people how, okay, that's a big part of it. It's a big piece of it. But again, if we can couple that with helping them see why these things are true, seeing there's a stable there that we can always point to consistently, that seems to take it to a whole nother level. And that's something that all of this, everything, I think, is something we really have to see for ourselves. Like, nothing anyone is ever going to point to or share is going to be helpful in someone else's words. It has to look like a truth for you. So I suppose when I was first in this and I'm like, principles, okay, I'm just going to kind of get in these ideas and see what I think. They didn't look like principles to me yet, and that's okay. But then I'm just saying, like, once they did, that took it to a whole nother level. So it's a nice thing to just, kind of get curious about yourself. Like, how much do I see truth in this? And no exceptions and no buts. And not with any judgment, not with that you should be seeing it that way, but just with curiosity, and see if that doesn't kind of help deepen things. So there, Bonnie, I said, I'm only going to talk for like 15 minutes and then I want other people to talk. And she said, everyone always says that. You'll talk for a half hour. You're right. So yeah, I would love to hear if you guys have questions or just anything that you're, anything you want to chat about.
Hey, Amy.
Hi, Marnix.
Hi. I have this burning question. For me, we talked about the principles, which are principles for me. They just like close the deal. I felt the implications of the principles long before I came into the whole philosophy or way of view at life. So for me, it just connected all the dots, and I never talk about it with the people I coach, never, because I don't feel the need. But there's this other thing, and I have to ask it to a woman. A very dear girlfriend of mine, and I have meetings with her when we talk to other people about stuff like this. And she is not in the 3 principles at all. She doesn't care about it. She has her own way of doing stuff. And while I was talking about her about the fact that you always feel what you think, she asked me, well, yeah, that might be the case, but how about hormones? And I didn't know. Because she said, well, she was pregnant right now. I said, I've never been so up and down in my emotions since that happened. So how do you put that away in your little system there? I didn't have an answer.
Yeah, I don't know that I do either, but it's a good question. But, I think, hormones, there's so many things like this, right? People say, well, what about sleep? What about, doesn't diet matter? What about hormone? What about when you're sick? What about when, and I mean, those things absolutely play a role in how we feel. And so this is the thing where I think it can sometimes feel like a bit of a paradox, and they aren't the sole determinant of anything. So sometimes her hormones leave her, at least mine did when I was pregnant, like, super grateful and, oh my gosh, I can't believe this is happening and I'm so lucky and what's going to happen. And other times everyone, needed to just go straight to hell. Like, it's wherever it is, right? And probably in both cases, it's safe to say there was some physical thing that was kind of escalating, feeling, thinking.
Yeah.
Still feeling your thinking. It's just that there's physical stuff, that comes up and contributes as well. So like when you're sleep deprived versus have, 8 hours of sleep, you're still feeling your thinking either way. But it's not to say that there aren't these other, physical factors that I think play a role. But I guess to me, like the principles kind of go beneath all that. Like it points to a deeper thing, and it gives a description, not a not a way out or not anything like that. They're just a description of what's going on. So hormones can lead thinking to be who the heck knows where. And that's what you feel. She's not feeling hormones. I mean, I don't know what hormones feel like. They're invisible, right? But her hormones can have an impact on that thinking and all kinds of things.
True that, yeah.
And I don't know that that's the answer, but that's just how it kind of makes sense to me, I guess.
Yeah, well, it's not necessary to have a watertight idea. I don't really care about that. But I was just curious about it. It same goes for like being scared. Someone's jumping out of the bushes. So you don't have time to think that he's a scary guy, I have to get away. And then I feel scared about it. You feel scared instantly, probably. And then you try to get the situation. It really doesn't matter in the end. What matters is that in a lot of cases, it really helps to know where it's coming from. That's all. But it was just, I had to ask this one question.
Yeah. And I think there's something in there that's really important too about like that we feel the power of thought move through us. So thought is the principle, right? That is like the energy that brings experience to us. And we say, you live in the feeling of your thinking, but sometimes thinking, we kind of think of that more as the outcome of thought in a way. So it's like when someone scares you, like there's this instant reaction. And then there's going to be some thinking, some little words in your head where it's like, I can't believe you did that. You're such a jerk. Or, oh, that was actually kind of funny. You really got me that time, or wherever it goes, and that seems like almost a different conversation too, Just kind of that distinction is interesting. I love just knowing that there are, that we're not locked into anything, like when I think of the sleep example a lot, and all the time people are like, oh, I didn't get any sleep. And I know, I mean, there's no denying the fact that when you get no sleep, you're thinking, it's still thought brought to life. It can't be anything else, but the thinking goes in a different direction, right? For 99.9% of people, 99.9% of the time, you're going to be grumpier. You're going to, like all kinds of things are just going to happen differently with no sleep. But 99.9%, like I think of the night before my wedding, I got like 2 hours of sleep, and then I went on to have the best day of my life, and I didn't feel tired at all. So what's up with that? And that's where it's like good to look at those exceptions sometimes, or those, less frequent cases, and be like, well, even if that's not the norm, just the fact that that can happen shows us that there's something else at play.
Yeah, and then again, it doesn't really matter because you know where it's coming from. So if you didn't sleep at all and you feel grumpy, it's not very difficult to know where that comes from.
Yeah.
So case solved, closed.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah, thank you.
So I have a question. I'm in a public place, so if there's lots of background noise, I'm sorry.
It's okay.
So I just recently learned about the Course in Miracles, and about the same time that I learned about the three principles, and they seem fairly similar. I was wondering I haven't really been exposed very much to it, but I was wondering, is it somewhat similar? Are the two principles or approaches somewhat similar?
I mean, I think that in the same way that, there's a lot of things that point to a similar truth, and they have different ways of kind of sharing that. So yeah, I like the Course in Miracles a lot. And like, I think it's like any religion. It's like many of these things, philosophies that do kind of point to something there. And to me, the something there that it points to is mind, what we would call mind, probably, A Course in Miracles definitely also, I can see anyway, how this kind of point to thinking. So it's like there's love, and then there's fear, there's love, which is us being in mind. And then everything else that's not love is fear, and that's thinking. You can see it that way. And I think they say that of those two, there's only two things, and of those two, only one is real, right? Which is what a big sword is cutting between. So I absolutely think so many things out there that resonate with people, point to the same big truth, and we just kind of pick the way in that feels best to us and makes sense. Yeah, thanks.
So maybe you could share a little bit of your online course if you'd like.
Yeah, maybe can I share a little at the end? Can you hang out for a little bit? Yeah, I'll talk about it a little bit at the end. That'd be great.
Okay.
Thanks, Craig.
I just unmuted myself. Is that okay?
Yeah, Terry. Hi, Terry. How are you?
Hi. Good. How are you?
Good.
I have Craig, a fairly lengthy background in A Course in Miracles. From about 20 something years ago, and just came across this understanding in the last 4 months ish, and see a lot of parallels as well with that understanding. Is this the thing that to me that feels new is, like Amy was saying, this idea of these truths and the practicality. With the Course in Miracles, I felt like I had this deep spiritual understanding and was kind of walking around on cloud nine for quite a while, and had that understanding with me for quite a while, like years. It was right there. I'd be going along in life and then just go, oh, everything's okay. That's right. Everything's okay. And it was what I kin to the sense of knowing mind is always there, always is always got your back, right? I love that these 3 principles, even though I don't necessarily speak about them that way because it's not a personal conversation. I don't know how to speak of that personally yet. I want to make sure I have a personal grounding in it before I start sharing it. Like it just, so I'm not scaring people off. Hang on a second. There's a certain amount of what I'm getting from the 3 principles now, having stepped away from A Course in Miracles for probably 15 years now. It's still sitting on my shelf. I used to facilitate a group. Is the practicality of it and the universal language of it. I couldn't ever really translate A Course in Miracles in an act. I mean, I couldn't really point to it as something I would say, hey, this is something you might want to take a look at. It was so immense, so many words, so many lessons, so much to do. For those of us who are stuck in our heads, it was really great for me at the time. I couldn't access my inner knowing, my inner truth through just saying, hey, everything's okay, all is well. I needed the complexity of all the words and the system of being able to work through and apply that to my life on a moment by moment basis. The thing with the principles is it feels like it's another inside out thing where you're, oh, there's nothing to do. This is so refreshing. I really think I need to do something, but that's just more thought. And the innocence of all of it, that just feels really astounding to me. And although the same, it feels more accessible to a broader audience. Feels more shareable, feels more, I don't know what else to say about it. And I don't think that the truth is the truth, whether it's coming to you through A Course in Miracles or not. I raised my hand originally because I was thinking about this idea of hormones and this idea of fear and this idea of not getting enough sleep and how that impacts your thinking. And one of the things I do remember back from A Course in Miracles is a lot of understanding around there are no laws about that. You know, like Amy said, 2 hours of sleep the night before her wedding, and she had an outstanding day. So if there was a law about sleep creating your experience, it would always create that experience. And so all the laws we have around nutrition and how much meditation we do and how much blah, blah, blah we do, none of those will stand the test of time with every person, every day, and every moment. And these principles do. I mean, they just are the basis. So I was struggling with that hormone thing the second you brought that up. I was thinking, oh yeah, what about that? You know, what about that? Or if you're feeling really crappy, you're sick or whatever, that's affecting your thinking. But then I think, no, because then what if a friend called you on the phone in that moment and said, you know, my son has just gotten in an accident and can you be with me in the hospital? I'll tell you what, I would not be sick. I'd be on it, right? All of a sudden I'd feel great. I'd be not feel great. I mean, you know what I mean? I wouldn't be caught in my own thinking around how I feel. I'd be now in the energy of wanting to be of service or help to a friend of mine, and I would no longer be feeling my hormones or feeling whatever I'm feeling. I'd be in another thought. So thanks for bringing that up, both the conversation around A Course in Miracles and the conversation around hormones and whatever else is up for us in our physicality. It's so great to see you, Amy, and thanks for being on here. And I almost missed it. I was so busy doing something else. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I love how you shared, you know, just that, like that there's something in this that's so practical for you and it's just there and it's just more accessible, and also, you know, that it doesn't have to be in any kind of package. You know, I think that's so helpful to just keep seeing it more yourself. That's all we can ever do, all of us. And then you just, when something becomes more personal for you, which a lot of this has, you know, then those are the things you start to just naturally share. But it's so easy. It doesn't have to be a, how am I doing with this, or where am I? You know, it'll just happen completely naturally. So I love that. Yeah. And it just, like what you said about the hormones and stuff too, it just kind of made me think like how we get into, you know, we have so much thinking that's invisible about how things affect us, all those laws and rules that we have for things. And we're just normal human beings and we live into that. We can't help it, you know, but there's so many cases like that example of you're feeling horrible and then something happens and boom, you're just out of it. And that's such a good place to look. Like, not with the expectation that we can create that on demand or that should be happening for us or anything, but the more loosely we hold everything. And that's not even something we have to do. Just by seeing that we live in this always moving, changing thinking, you start to naturally hold it more loosely. And then, then we do have more of those experiences where you get no sleep or you're feeling terrible, but it doesn't impact you the way that your mind's telling you it should. It's kind of like that, you know, opening the door to your house and saying, oh, there's a whole other realm here. I can actually be sick and happy. I can actually be tired and happy, you know, and it's a really cool thing to see.
Or even just tired and neutral.
Yeah.
Where I'm not making something out of whatever it is that's going on. I'm just aware. And then things fall away a lot faster.
Yeah.
You know, being the queen of rumination in the past, as a human being.
Yeah.
A very big butt. Thank you, Amy.
We all have them. You're welcome. Thank you.
Hi.
Hi.
Hi. Yeah, I also want to thank everyone here and the discussions, particularly, yeah, I guess those must come up quite often, the ones about, you know, hormones or sleep or, you know, sort of those sort of physical things. And I don't know, just the discussions today, it just really sat really well with me. You know, even though I've heard these discussions before, it just sort of rang a little more true to me today. Something came up though, to me, a question, and it's I guess I was introduced to the principles maybe 4 or 5 years ago, and I still struggle with the question, you know, what is that? What's that all about? And sometimes, you know, I don't feel it's the right time or place to just sort of go really into it. And often if I do choose to do that, like, you know, these are the 3 principles, you know, mind, conscious, and thought, it's not, you know, I get lost, and I can tell by looking at the person, it's like they have no idea what I'm trying to say. So yeah, just even if anyone sort of has their own favorite sort of little soundbite. I live on Salt Spring Island, so I'm going to be involved in the school in November. And yeah, just even to be able to tell friends and family, you know, and they say, oh, well, what's this all about? You know, you know, it's like, do I call it a philosophy? Do I call it a, you know, psychological model? You know, it's like all these.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, and maybe it's such a bad, like, a cop-out answer, but it's really what occurs to me. It's like just the fact that no one knows.
Yeah.
Like, everyone struggles with the same thing you're struggling with.
Yeah.
Like, okay, clearly there's no answer. Like, clearly there's no way, or else we wouldn't all be asking that same kind of question. And, you know, and that, like, there's different answers that make sense for different people in different moments. So there's something really nice in being where you are, where you have no soundbite to grab to. Like, I kind of think, as much as you might feel like, oh, I don't know how to talk about this,
Yeah.
you know, that might actually be the best thing. It might actually be like, you know, it kind of forces you to just be there with the person you're talking with and share in whatever way you think might make sense for them in that moment, or just whatever way's resonating with you in that moment. Because I mean, I don't know about you guys, I mean, to me, it's like a different sort of little descriptor or essence of it comes up all the time, you know, and just depending on what we're seeing. Did anyone else have, Marnix, did you have one, or did anyone else have something that they want to share to that? Hold on, let me, can you unmute Marnix, Donnie? Is he?
Yeah, what just occurred to me, I never talk about it. I always talk from it.
Yeah.
Because I get tangled up immediately if I try to explain it. But I feel what it's about, and I talk from the feeling. That's all. And it always works, because the feeling is always the most pure, most inventive environment for new stuff. I never talk about this the same way. There's no trajectory I always take. There's no steps I take in the conversation. I just listen to people, and something comes up, and it's because it comes from the place that where it comes from. It's just like everything I say is like marinated in that feeling. That's all. So for me, it's really easy just to never talk about it. I don't need it.
Thank you.
And you have such a nice, like, glow about you that I'm guessing you don't need it either. Like that, you know, that's what I think when I see you. Like, you just seem like you're so, like, just peaceful in this, and like that'll do it. That'll do it. I think a lot of times I say something like, oh, it's an understanding of life that's really helped me. And that's about the end of it, you know. And then if people want to ask more, then it's like, then you get to get into a personal story, or again, something that's touched you. But in terms of any kind of descriptor, I don't know, but they'll come up maybe when they're needed. And if not, you just feel it, like you guys are saying, and you just go with the feeling.
Thank you.
Yeah. I'll meet you in November in Salt Spring. Yeah, Ellen says talking from 3P is more effective, definitely. You know, it's like people say, like no one's going to listen to words anyway unless they feel it from you, you know, and then in the feeling of it, often the words aren't even necessary, or they just don't matter. Like from the feeling, that's what I've seen a lot too, is like from the right feeling, words come out of your mouth and you have no idea what they're going to be anyway, but whatever words are there, and you usually don't even remember them after the fact. You're like, I don't know what the heck I said, but I was feeling it. I know I was saying something that felt right to me. And it's very freeing to know that people aren't going to really hear what you say anyway. You know, I think that's so freeing. Like sometimes people are just going to see your glow, Kristen, and in a moment, if they're open to it and they're feeling it, and that's going to be enough for them. That's going to be contagious. Other people are going to be so caught up in their thinking that you could be glowing right in front of them and they won't feel it. So it's almost like that's a really nice sort of permission. Like, we don't have to worry about it. What else? Maybe any other last thoughts or questions or anything anyone has? Kind of just on the topic, I guess, of, you know, seeing more and maybe where we kind of innocently get in the way. It's just the importance, I guess, of staying really, really new in this and always being new in this. And that's something I've learned from my mentors who have been around this understanding for 40 years, that they still know that they know nothing. And in fact, they know that they know nothing more now today than they did 40 years ago, you know, and that to me is what makes this so exciting. Like, it's so cool to have, for me, immerse myself in this for just 5 little years and be like, oh my gosh, like I'm just at square one, if I'm even on square one yet. And again, you know, I'm on square one with people that have been around this forever. Like, how cool is that that there's just always more to sort of see in that. I was thinking this morning, for some reason, I don't know why this came to my mind, but I started doing yoga 2 years ago. And before that, I thought yoga was like, I was way too athletic for yoga. I mean, yoga is like for people that just want to take it easy, right? They just want to go meditate and lay on a mat and like whatever. I was going to do like CrossFit and boot camp, you know, until I started hurting myself and realized I was torturing myself. And I thought one day, okay, I'm going to try this yoga class and see how it goes. And very quickly, I realized how wrong I had been about that. And now it's all I do. And it's such a cool thing to be able to be in something like it's just one example in yoga, a very limited example, but to be in this practice and to know that even after 2 years of doing it like 5 or 6 times a week, there's so much growth that still could happen. Like, you never reach the end of it. And that is nothing compared to this understanding, you know, just seeing more about life. It's like, that's one tiny little practice that it continues to unravel and you can grow into. And the excitement of just feeling like, wow, I can grow into this. You know, I mean, reaching the end and being good at something or getting it, that's fine for a little cheap thrill. But I mean, this is awesome. We are in a conversation about life and how it works. And there's so many mysteries and no one knows for sure. And it's just a fun thing to just keep looking at. So in all of this, I don't ever want to make it seem like, you know, oh, if you're stuck, like you're actually stuck or you're in your way. Like, that's not true. Like, it's a continual learning curve. And there are ways that we tend to get ourselves, you know, in a tizzy, but that's okay. Because then that thinking clears, or we watch something or hear something that points those out, and then that frees up and you just kind of get to keep seeing more.
Does anyone else have a question or comment? If not, Amy, why don't you share a little bit about the school?
Sure. So I have an online school called the Little School of Big Change, and it's full of videos and animations and stories, conversations with other practitioners that are kind of, you know, put together and tested with some real intention, in a sense. I mean, people are going to get whatever they get, but it really is a nice flow. It's kind of, I like the word curated. It feels very sophisticated, but it's a curated collection of, you know, like kind of walking people through an understanding of this, prompting you to get curious and see what you see. And is sort of designed, you know, for people who are kind of struggling with a habit or some anxiety or depression, or again, very loosely defined. But there are a lot of people in the school who just want to see more about this understanding too, who are just curious, and they're getting so much out of it as well. So so there's some content there that you kind of get led through, and then there's an amazing community where, again, we're sharing and everybody's seeing, oh yeah, me too, I guess I'm not that special. And then feeling the relief and freedom that comes from not being special. And we have calls like this a couple times a month, and it's a really great place. So it's I open up the doors to let new people in 3 times a year. So one of those periods is happening October 23rd. So if you're interested, you can check it out at littleschoolofbigchange.com. And over the next couple weeks leading up to that, I'm sharing some stories of people who have really found a lot of freedom from seeing something in this, understand, or just in the truth of life. Marnix has an amazing story he shared with us of some of the freedom he's found. And so those are good. If you get on the wait list, again, you'll get those. And they're just really, really great stories of just everyday people, ordinary people who saw something and their lives changed in some pretty awesome ways. A lot of hope. Thank you. Thank you guys for being here so much. Thanks for listening. And great talking with you.
Thank you so much, Amy. This was really great. Really very insightful for me too. This was a great conversation. So thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thank you.
And just to let everybody know, the next webinar is on October 26th at noon Eastern time, and it's with Jackie Ford. So yeah, unless anyone has any other comments or anything to say, or you do, Amy, we can say goodbye for today. All right, well, thanks everybody for joining.
Thank you, everyone.